Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of The Sinking City 2. I play on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the Series S, PS5, and PC. Let's get into the story. So you play as Calvin. He and the love of his life, Faye, decide that it's a great idea to mess around with occult books and eldritch rituals and so on and so forth. Unfortunately for them, it goes exactly as you think that would go. She winds up with her soul separated from her body, and his goal is to reattach her soul to her body through a ritual he's discovered. And what follows is a Lovecraftian nightmare of twists and turns along the way. What do I mean by that? Arkham, the town they're in, is flooding. Very Lovecraftian. There's weird supernatural world stuff going on. There's also these worm type things that are taking over dead bodies. And other creepy eldritch horrors coming from who knows where. And what I will say is, overall, I actually really enjoyed the story, although they do the whole, your princess is in another castle thing a few too many times. They really needed to figure out a better way of doing that and furthering the story. But overall, I enjoyed the story, and by the time it was done, I actually really liked it. Now let's move on to the audio. And the music is fine. It's nothing that really stood out to me, but it does work well enough. But like I said, it's at best fine. As for the rest of the sound effects, those are actually really well done, whether it's footsteps, walking through water, walking through whatever, stepping on things. The sound of the slither, the sound of the rain, the sound of the creatures, the sound of the world around you. I think it's all well done. Then you have the voiceover work, and the voiceover work is good. I think it works well. It's not necessarily the top tier, but it's definitely good, and it definitely works. Now let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a survival horror game, and it does something that's actually kind of interesting, and it took me a minute to figure it out when I was first playing it. And that is, it's kind of an evolution of survival horror. When you start the game, you have limited inventory, limited health, limited ammo, but by the time you're done, it's much more Resident Evil 4, where you have a lot of inventory, a lot more health, a lot more guns, and a lot more ammo. There are some growing pains in there. When you're early on and you have limited inventory, they do throw maybe a few too many enemies at you. I think they could take that back a bit, but you learn that you need to run and dodge those enemies. Part of the growing pains there, though, is there are times where you will definitely get trapped and you will get the shit kicked out of you. I opened a door and there were 3 enemies on either side. I couldn't get past them. It was a pain. I had to dodge backwards, loop around the map. It sucked. But I get what they're going for. Now, as I stated, you get ammo, you get healing items, you get crafting items, there's puzzle items because it's a survival horror game. The one thing you do run into with the more limited inventory, though, is you waste a lot of time running back and forth between safe rooms and objectives. That does really slow down the pacing. It feels like you're doing it in certain levels, like 50% of the level. Now, this game actually has some upgrading systems. You find these runes, you can use those on your nightshade mask, and you can take more damage, reload quicker, etc., though it is limited. You also get upgrades for your weapons, and they do make a considerable difference in, accuracy, damage, etc. Almost forgot, but one mechanic that I do need to mention that I felt was a bit weak was the melee. It really could have been stronger. There were times where you would try and use it to maybe push some enemies back. Didn't work great. One thing I think they do incredibly well, especially to deal with limited inventory at any time, or ammo or health, is when they throw you into arenas or boss fights. In the boss fights, enemies will drop a crap ton of ammo, health, etc. You'll have the big boss, you'll have the little mobs, you kill the little mobs, you get ammo, health, etc. In arena things where there's multiple enemies, kind of timed thing, there are boxes that will replenish. They will replenish your supplies, and then you run around, do a nice little loop, and the boxes themselves will replenish, giving you more ammo, more health, more crafting items. So I actually thought that was clever, especially with the limited inventory and the fact that they're kind of merging some Resident Evil 1 stuff, Resident Evil 4 stuff. I don't like making direct comparisons, but it does feel very much like those were heavy inspirations, and it helps there with merging those two. Now, it has a New Game Plus mode, and I gotta say, it kinda pissed me off. It's cool going into it with all the knowledge you have. You also have all of your nightshade mask upgrades, but you don't have any of your weapon upgrades. Your stash doesn't have any of your weapons, And so that's really frustrating to me, and it's partly my own fault for not noticing that from the start, because you have to buy like infinite ammo, etc. for certain weapons. But I missed, you also have to buy the ability to have them in the stash. And I gotta say, I didn't like that. It kind of made New Game Plus disappointing for me when I first started it. It is a little more interesting going through with the knowledge you now have, but I also wanted the gear that I had and the inventory space that I had. Now let's move on to the controls, and overall I felt the controls worked well. I did feel like the dodge mechanic was a bit spotty at times. But overall, I felt like your movement, your controls, your camera, the shooting, the aiming, the overall responsiveness of the buttons was good. Now let's get into the graphics and visuals, and it's a bit of a mixed bag here. It's far from the prettiest game you're gonna see for this generation. I mean, very far from. And there are some cutscenes where the facial animations for Faye and Calvin are just busted looking. Like, not busted, but they are janky. They don't look quite right. They feel weird, and maybe that can be patched or something so that they look a little more normal. But then at the same time, they have some really amazing, like, small details here or there. Like Calvin's hat, the fabric of his hat. I have a hat of that fabric, and it looks exactly the same. I was really impressed by that detail. But certain animations aren't as awesome. You know, it is a bit mixed bag here, so if visuals are ultra important to you, it might be a rough thing to get over, but visuals aren't the most important thing to me. They never have been. I do think they can be important, but they're not the most important. What I really did love was the way they captured, like, Lovecraftian horror, this town that's slowly being flooded, the horror of stuff coming from the flood to take dead bodies and reanimate them, the creatures that come from it. And I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but there are certain areas where I'm like, oh, this is like so Lovecraftian. It's amazing. Just the design. And honestly, I really enjoyed how they built the city, what it looks like, the dreary vibe of it. And while everything is dreary and rain-soaked, it doesn't feel completely lifeless and colorless, even though it is kind of lifeless. Most of the humans are gone. They have fled. But like, there's still color in the world. It's not like that brown or gray or beige that some games do. So I did really appreciate that. I think the creatures move in significantly creepy ways, and I liked that. And they definitely give off some gross vibes, which I think works. Now let's get into the glitches and issues. And major one, like really major one, is this game crashed on me no less than 5 times, probably 6. I didn't really count, but it was agonizing. You'd have just completed a thing and the game doesn't even have time to save and crash, and you have to completely redo 30 minutes of a puzzle. Like, my first playthrough only took about 11 to 12 hours, which is probably a bit long, but whatever. But for it to crash 5 to 6 times in that span, probably 5, because then it crashed another time when I was doing New Game Plus. But either way, that's a lot of crashing. That's crashing for every like 2 hours of gameplay, not including recovery time from dying. Then another major issue I had, which I wasn't predicting to have, was during the final boss fight, my controller died. Which, okay, fine, whatever, except for the part where I just get the controller died message across my screen and the game doesn't pause, so I'm still being attacked, so I have to like restart the controller just long enough to get out of that and pause so that I can swap in new batteries. Like that, no. Just no, that is not acceptable. Okay, so let's get into the wrap up. There are some issues that I just mentioned, but I actually really enjoyed the story. Like, really enjoyed the story. By the time it was done, I was very happy with the story. The gameplay mechanics at first took me a minute to understand what they were doing and how it's like evolving from like a Resident Evil 1 style survival horror into like a Resident Evil 4 style survival horror. But once that clicked in my brain, I was like, oh, okay. That does not change the part where there is still a good amount of running about and dodging enemies, as well as running back and forth from safe rooms. So there are some gameplay issues that I have, but overall the joy I found in this game outweighs any of the issues I had. So I'm actually comfortable recommending this game. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me what's your favorite Lovecraft-inspired video game? I may have asked that before. I don't remember, but here we go. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.